Hi, everybody. Stephanie Brown here. Everyone nods when quality comes up, but the last 10% of a project is where the time, the money, and reputations leak away. That's what today's live stream is about. Controlling quality before it controls your projects. Again, I'm Stephanie Brown from Intelligent Construction Opportunities, and I'm joined today by Renee and Greg Glendenning of Quality Control University. These are two people with decades of credibility in the trenches of construction quality. And I just want to give you a quick little background on their backgrounds before, we start things underway here. I want to say, I'm absolutely amazed by their backgrounds. So let's start with Renee. Renee has a mechanical engineering degree from Colorado State. She was a senior mechanical engineer as Thiokol Propulsion for NASA. She worked with Intel facilities and later ran her own contracting firm in Colorado. So she's got over 30 years in construction. And today what she does is she travels the country doing QC, quality control audits, training teams, and speaking to industry groups about why quality control saves your project. Yay. And next up, I want to introduce very quickly Greg, her husband. Greg came up through the sheet metal union, and he worked as a certified test and balance supervisor, commissioning agent, and as well a small business owner. He too has over 30 years experience in construction, many as a quality control manager at both the site and corporate levels. And today he's still doing QC for rail and solar projects and bringing those lessons to us all. So again, welcome to you both. What stellar backgrounds and
hello, Stephanie.
Great people to talk about quality. So let's start with the big picture, guys. Why do you think quality gets sidelined when everyone already says they own it?
I think it's a mindset. I think subcontractors think they don't need quality control. That's a general contractor situation. I think GCs think that they have a staff that understands QC and they've all got it. Everybody's got it. Greg likes to use the analogy like a safety officer.
Yeah, I mean, everybody, we hear safety on the project. Everybody is responsible for safety, and that role and that terminology gets put on quality as well. Well, everybody is responsible for quality.
Yeah.
Well, if everybody's responsible for quality,
then who's doing what?
And we wouldn't have quality issues on the project.
Right.
So.
Right on. So which role do you think thinks they own quality but actually doesn't?
I think everything. I think PMs like to say they are the runners of quality, but they are really concentrating on the subcontractors and cost, right? And schedule. The soups don't have time to really do all the quality control checks. Superintendents are focused on managing the subcontractors and managing schedules. So that's their main focus. And that's why we really think we need dedicated personnel for quality control.
Yeah, I would definitely say superintendents think that they own quality and project engineers think that they own quality.
Yeah.
But when it's not getting done, then they go look at the quality manager if the project has one and what have you been doing? So,
right. Or they get a PE out of school, right?
Yeah.
They've got that fancy piece of paper, so they understand quality. But we go and talk to universities and trade schools all the time. They don't really teach quality control. They don't put an emphasis on it. So you got a brand new PE with a shiny piece of paper, but they're not trained. And if they're not trained in what they're supposed to be doing in cradle to grave of a project, then things are going to get missed.
And they don't have experience either. I mean,
oh no, they're brand new. Yeah.
Project engineers are usually cheaper on the project, and they're usually a catch-all for anything and everything that needs to be done.
Anything the PM needs, a gopher for the soup. I mean, they just become the catch-all.
Yeah. And there's not enough focus given to quality or enough emphasis. A lot of construction management degrees, you think they would cover everything, but construction management degrees are just that. It's about project management. When they talk about safety in those courses and quality control in those courses,
it's like a 1 or 2 day deal.
It's usually a half a semester if you're lucky, and it's just not enough.
So, I want to get sort of deeper now. What's the biggest misconception that you think owners and PMs and craftspeople have about each other's responsibilities? Is it an ignorance thing? Is it a assumptive thing? What's
You
your
know,
experience?
talking to a contractor recently that we ended up training for, but at first they hit me with, we don't hire people that need to be trained. I hire folks who have been in the industry that know what they're going to do. And that's really a showstopper there without wanting to invest in your folks.
Yeah.
That, and we get a lot of contractors who feel like I'm going to give them all of this training and they're going to walk away with it and they're just going to leave with it. So why would I pay to do all this training if they're just going to leave with my training? And that again is a real career limiting, it's a company limiting culture. And that's why, we make all of our stuff lifetime access. So that one individual leaves, you still have lifetime access. So train the next one, but please invest in your team and please train your team because it's your bottom line. And it's a make it or break it in our industry today.
Exactly. Exactly.
So here's a good opportunity then. So Greg, can you share a story, because you're out in the field every day, where QC got dumped on the wrong role and what it cost the project?
Absolutely. So the best example that I can have is that a superintendent and a quality control manager were on a project together, as they should be, but the superintendent got behind, wanted to pull that labor resource from quality control to helping schedule, help chase contractors, keeping them on task, because the project was just too big and needed some more help. And then when things started falling through the cracks, quality-wise, submittals weren't being approved, the inspections weren't being done correctly. It really shone a flashlight on the gap there, and they needed to go back and realign their job scopes.
So who took that back? Who said, "Yep, this is wrong. Okay, stop."
Well, it happened at an ownership level. Really, the ownership. Project managers have a lot of control on the project, but smaller companies, right? Project managers are usually, sometimes they're the owners, and they have a lot of control on larger projects. You've got a corporate QC, and so that's where you would go to realign the roles on the project.
So let's sort of start going into accountability a little bit. Who's missing it, and who's going to feel the pain first? Like, I want you to think about owners versus PMs versus the craftspeople. Who's actually going to feel that pain first?
The field suffers first. The craftsmen suffer first. Yeah. They suffer and they think that Jack's not doing their job, or Cindy doesn't know what she's doing, or I'm doing everything and I'm spread too thin. And you start hearing that. And as soon as you hear that disconnect, one of the audits I did recently, the owner didn't think the quality control manager they had was capable of doing their job. And when I got there, I just realized that they were just being asked to do pieces of everybody else's job. But it wasn't that they weren't qualified or they didn't know what they were doing. They were just spread too thin.
Like doing what, for example? I've read crazy things like,
run into Home Depot. Run into Home Depot to get screws. Coffee run in the morning. Take a look at this schedule and beef up the schedule. Go see if Joe Smo is completed this in the field. If this sub's done. And quality control needs to be focused on quality control. They don't need to be focused on everything else.
And when you have impacts like that, where your quality control manager is doing everybody else's job, that really also ultimately affects the subcontractors, because things that should be inspected aren't getting inspected. They're being covered up. And so there might be rework involved, which affects the bottom line, and who's responsible for that to pay for that.
And sometimes it's not done by malice. Most of the time they just don't have clear roles and responsibilities. And I know that sounds so simple and it sounds so silly, but we see really large companies and really small companies. They don't have that. I see project managers that don't know how to manage a QC manager because they don't know what they're supposed to be doing, and then you get to interview reviews, and they're giving them a template for an interview review for a superintendent, and they're trying to rate them on superintendent roles because, again, they just don't know what a quality control manager should do. And honestly, the roles and responsibilities as the start for all of that. It's for onboarding. It starts with onboarding. It gives clear expectations, and it goes all the way through.
And it's just not for the quality control manager.
Oh, no.
I mean, that's one piece of the puzzle, right? You've got, safety on your project, quality control manager on your project. You've got a PM and you've got a super. Everybody needs to know what their roles and responsibilities are. And if you don't have that defined, you're spending either time doing rework or doing the same thing that the other person was, or you're completely missing something altogether because nobody knew that they needed to do it.
Right.
So I kind of want to do a little bit of a intro here as far as your responsibility matrix is concerned, because I think this sort of fits in with what we're talking about when we're talking about, who this affects and what does that look like. And maybe, Renee, you can talk a little bit about how does a structured framework change the conversation during the kickoff and then throughout the project.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit.
Yeah, it's more than just a flow chart. So people, put together a staff flow chart for almost any project from RFP through. And that's just going to say so-and-so's doing this role, so-and-so's got this role. It doesn't, though, outline who's doing what from cradle to grave as far as responsibilities. And that's what this does. Our responsibility matrix goes through, I think we have the flow chart up.
We do have the flow chart up, and I want you to be so let's just sort of look at this and spend a little bit of time on this. I want people to understand, as you said, it's not just a flow chart. Everybody can get a flow chart. You can get a flow chart in Canva. You can Google, give me a flow chart. You get a flow chart. What I want to make sure the audience appreciates here is how you've designed this to actually fit out the responsibility rules.
Yeah, this is actually, we call it our CX flow chart because it really dives deep in the commissioning process, but it's so much more than that. So this flow chart is used as a tool to track from startup through completion all the way to turnover. And the reason we developed this was we were finding over and over again that contractors were missing key components that need to be captured in their master schedule. So when this is formulated by the QCs, it fills those gaps in. It's color coded. So the gray is where you put in the name of the activity. The light mint green is for a specification number. The orange gives start dates and durations. And then the blue can be, marked complete. Most of our clients use this. They plot it out large and they put it in like a job trailer. And then the soups can literally with a red Sharpie mark through when each thing's complete. It shows the critical path down the center. You're not going to miss activities. People don't really think about all the activities and how they can affect projects. And I know Greg's seen that a lot.
Yeah. So these are all, it's go, no go. It's a gating process before you can go to the next activity. So what we usually do with this is we take the end date and then we work backwards. So we take all of these activities that are shown in there and we start plugging in durations where they're called out for that specific task in the specification. And we start working backwards. We figure, either we're right on task with where we need to be at in the schedule, or if we are already behind schedule and we need to look at maybe working weekends or something like that to catch up. But
it's tied to the master schedule. It doesn't replace the master schedule.
That's right.
We've actually had P6 programmers on different jobs we ran tie the P6 schedule to it by formula so that this would update with the P6 schedule. But it's a good pictorial view. Fire alarm testing, for example, when we're doing battery tests on fire alarm, we shut the power down to the whole site. And that can't go on a day when you're doing punch lists and guys need power for their nail guns and their screw guns, and you need power to run equipment. You can't do that when you're doing test and balance. So if that's not coordinated right, you're going to have problems. Air barrier testing is another one where guys are off site. There's a lot of those big oop moments when the QC wants to shut something down and the superintendent and the subs are like, we've got somebody else working over here.
And this just isn't something to be, hoarded by the general contractor. You need to share it with all of the subcontractors that are involved in all of these processes so they know what's going on. You can't have a piece of mechanical equipment being stopped when you're doing building pressurization testing, or if you're doing timed events on making sure that the control system is working, for
Control
24 hours for control testing.
Right.
So
and it's good for clients.
absolutely, that it ensures that they know that you've got everything accounted for in the schedule, in this, and it gives them a warm and fuzzy that you know what you're doing.
Greg was actually called in to be an MEP coordinator for a large joint venture on a military base.
Yep.
And that client had lost all respect for our customer and all confidence.
Yep.
And then you worked with the team and populated.
Yeah, I went through their P6 schedule. I found the common items. I made sure that they were populated so that the federal, the client that ultimately the project was being built for knew that everything was included in there. And so we added all of those items to the P6 schedule, and it was almost 250 different items.
Yeah.
And
there's a lot that goes into scheduling the quality control requirements.
We went into a big red zone meeting, and they were the client was very standoffish, that the client that we work for didn't know what they were doing. But as soon as we rolled this out, they took a big sigh of relief and realized that they finally had it under control.
Right.
So go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was just going to say the visual really helps, right? It helps the different subcontractors to see how they affect each other, right? And it kind of brings some of that to the job trailer, because then you have the conversations like, oh, look, this is not done yet. The startup's not done yet. I can't do this. You're holding me up. You're holding. But it starts some of that friendly conversation because they see the schedule come to life in a picture view instead of just a flat. I mean, Microsoft projects schedules are easy. P6 not necessarily easy for all subs to look at and decipher. So.
And not every subcontractor is going to be able to afford a P6 or Microsoft project, and so
this gives them.
We like to go old school. We like to have this printed out on the job trailer wall in 24 by 36 format, all filled out, and so everybody can see it, and weekly updates to make sure that everything is on track.
Our goal is to get the QCs involved in schedule at the beginning when the schedule is being made. And that's what we discuss in our schedule training module that we run for QCs, because they need to be involved from the start. You really don't want to have to populate this as a come save me, but it does that.
And we talk about in our training too that these are conversations that you need to have before the project gets kicked off. You're starting to develop your master schedule with your project management team. Right. The quality control managers really have key input that they can give to identify issues very early on.
Yeah, and it tracks not just tests. It has submittals and the final O&Ms and the warranty and the spare parts and the owner training, all those little things that hold you up at the end, which hold up our final money. It holds up our money.
Yes, but I also think, you two of you are calling out to me what's very imperative here. I want to give a shout out to Pixly. Pixly is a great example of an app that allows you to take a photo of anything in construction and has a really simple workflow so that it's effective and works for everybody. But to your very point, whether you're using P6, which is Oracle, or you're using, a photo app, at the end of the day, it's what's serving the visual, because nobody on a job site's running around, with their eyes glued to their rudderized iPad. They're just not. They've got the actual physical manual work to do. And we all know that. So that's a way of an overstatement, but that's why a tool is a tool. So it can be a paper tool, it can be part digital, it can be whatever it needs to be. But what is going to serve the project is what matters, and what's going to serve the outcomes of the individual, which is a good segue for my next question, which is, if you're a PM or a QC manager or sub, whatever you are, what's a single thing you want to see with your name on it? So if we're talking about those three different roles, where of this particular matrix do you want to see them attached to it? Is the PM attached to everything?
The PM's attached to the schedule part. So the PM cares about the start date and the duration, the orange. That's what the PM's going to care about. And the soup is in charge of running the subs to the schedule. So they're going to care about who's in charge of it, who's doing it. And then they're going to care about, again, duration and where it's going to get hung up. So
Mhm.
And what about last but not least, the QC manager? Where, I mean, you
We're
want
in
them
charge
to,
of, we're in charge of driving the whole boat. So that's
Driving and witnessing.
yeah, you need to drive and witness from startup all the way through closeout. And if you've got a QC manager who hasn't been trained or is not strong and not been driving it, they leave it up to the commissioning agent, for example. I hear that all the time. I've hired a commissioning agent, they're doing it. Well, that commissioning agent only cares about their one piece. They only care about their little piece of the pie, and then they're
Mhm.
going to up and leave. And we joke about this because when I met Greg, he was commissioning some of my work.
oh,
And so I was like, oh, yay, he's got it. And then he was like, okay, I finished the test. I'll see you on the next one. And I'm like, it's not done. Like, no, it's not finished. And he's like, oh, mine is. And he
Yeah.
left me. And that was when we first met, actually. And that was when I first realized, oh, I am really hosed. I haven't been driving it. I thought he was taking it and had it. And then I had to go find all the pieces that were left and figure out what was left and figure out how to drive it home. And again, that was a big push for this kind of tool. So
Yeah. Commissioning agent. I'm sorry. Go ahead,
no,
Stephanie.
no, go ahead. Finish.
So a commissioning agent, you would think, would look at the whole entire commissioning closeout process. Well, they don't.
they lie.
The commissioning agent is just really responsible for the installation and for the testing of usually mechanical systems and electrical systems. What this flow chart does is it looks at the whole entire thing, and Renee is absolutely correct. It's the commissioning is a small portion of that, but the whole entire scope is the responsibility of the quality control manager to push to completion.
Yeah.
So if we ignored accountability altogether, what have you, give me examples, like you actually talk about dollars, you have to talk about projects, but what does that cost in hours, dollars, and
months and hundreds of thousands of dollars?
Yeah.
We ran really big projects for the federal world. At one time, we had QC managers on 3 of the largest Corps of Engineering projects stateside in the United States. And so we're talking millions of dollars. And when you lose months, if you bring a tab guy on and then they come and they say, you're not ready for me, or a commissioning guy on, then they walk away. And then you have to reschedule them, and they may not have an opening for another 2 or 3 weeks. Same thing with the fire alarm testing. That takes, specialized individuals that come on to do that. And if those folks leave your site because one sub wasn't ready, then you're talking weeks, and then you're sitting still. Like, you can't move forward with any of this. You're just dead in the water until you can get it fixed and get them back on.
Yeah, it all goes back to, well, the project managers are responsible for developing the schedule, and the superintendent is responsible for driving that schedule. Without the quality control manager that knows this, very
intricate
dance. Thank you. That there's nobody driving it because the project manager doesn't. Yeah. And like Renee was talking about, if you've got those specialized testing contractors that leave your site, it's not only you're losing time in the schedule to get them to come back, but it's extra trip charges, right? Because they, you set up the time and the date that they were to be there. Yeah. And then they were there and you weren't ready for them. So that usually translates into a trip charge, And
then it runs into liquidated damages. And if you don't have LDs on your project, it runs into extending overhead costs, which it's just as painful, right? It's sometimes just as painful, because you're paying for your staff to be there. You're paying for their trucks. You're paying for the copier. You're paying for the site trailer. And all that stuff adds up when suddenly you're a month or a month and a half.
And it shouldn't be taken out of contingency. It all comes, every project has some amount of contingency and or schedule float. The goal of this is to bring the schedule back to the left. Nobody wants to push the schedule out to the right because that duration increases. Yeah. You want to be able to pull it into the left, and all of the project management teams forget about all of this testing.
Yeah.
They always do.
So this is when your next tool is so relevant, your submittal log. So now that we sort of know that you first start with your accountability, that sets the foundation, whether it's paper, digital, or a mix of it. You've got to make sure that the responsibilities are clear, and you move on, obviously, to the schedule. So we want to sort of remember here we'll get a I just want everybody to know you're going to get a post-event recap of everything that breaks this down. And you're going to see exactly how these tools we're talking about today line up with individual roles that we're also talking about.
Mhm.
So I just want to pitch this now. So what really happens when the schedules stretch from far past what was promised? I mean, how do you take your tools and get things back in line? You've talked a few ideas around that, but give me an actual story that, or a scenario you're so familiar with where you've been able to use these tools to get these things back in line.
Yeah, submittal log plays a big role in that. And I'm sure that some viewers that watch this may roll their eyes and they may say, I run a big fancy software and I have a log in there and I'm all covered. But what we're finding time and time again is that if you don't tailor those softwares to your needs for your specific project, you're going to miss things. If you've got lead submittals, you have to put time for a lead review from your lead guy or girl. If you've got a design build, you've got to put time in there for the design. Sometimes commissioning submittals have to run for different levels of commissioning. They've got to run through the commissioning agent. And all that usually happens before you send it to your client for their review. And if you're not tracking each and every piece of that puzzle, then the PM doesn't have the information they need to understand where the schedule slip's happening and if they can recover. So if your client is taking longer to review those submittals than what's in your contract, this is where all the contract people love me, because read your contract, please read your contract. But if they're taking too long, then this tool enables the PMs to capture that and then go ask for additional schedule time. I mean, every PM does that. If your design team is holding you up, that design team is under the general contractor. So that gives the PM and the owner the ammo they need to go and say, hey, you're holding us up. We're causing schedule slips because you're not getting these reviews. So this log, again, is an example that lots of people grab our paper tool that's in Word or Excel, and then they either use that as is, or they use it to talk to the developers of their bigger softwares to make sure they've captured all the pieces.
And you can even take it one step further than that, which is what I like to do. Looking at the submittal log, you know who the contractors are that are going to be doing, those submittals. And if they're constantly being returned or rejected by the client, that they need some extra help, obviously, or training.
Like we have some training we do.
We definitely have subcontractor training, which talks about the submittal process, how to do submittals, but it also lets you gauge and have a repository of, this contractor doesn't do so well on this type of project, so maybe we're not going to use them next time. So big picture, it provides a lot of information. It provides a lot of ammunition for the project management team to say, well, you've cost us 45 days in the schedule because you've taken so long over and above what your contract says that you will. We need those days back. And usually that's a negotiation tool that a quality control manager will track with these items.
And we hear a lot too, Stephanie, folks say, well, there's a log in our software. So the Corps of Engineer Projects has QCS RMS, and there is a log in there. But if your QC makes the submittal transmittal and then gets pulled away from their desk and they go do inspections for the rest of the day, like on a Friday, then the log is saying they did the submittal here. So if they get sidetracked and they don't either electronically submit or hand the paper copy, depending on what the needs is of that project, then that sits all weekend. And then Monday morning they go, oh, I forgot to hit send and I didn't send it. Well, suddenly that log's not a true look anymore. It's false information because the log says that you sent it on a Friday. You didn't get to it till a Monday afternoon. That's, that's a gap in.
How do you take your tools and if it can get lost, even if it's digital, how do you keep the real time?
Well, our QCs don't populate this log until the day that they transmit, whether that's electronic or hard copy, the actual submittal. And so that's what you need to make sure. That's a piece of the puzzle. Like anyone that's running submittal software, go talk to your programmers, go talk to those that are running that program for you and make sure. So when we talk log, that's why we really wanted to talk about the importance of the submittal log with everybody today, not because we think you need a Excel spreadsheet, but because you need to make sure whatever you're using has the right information.
And it's tracking all the steps all the way from creation to close. And without that information, you do not have an accurate picture of how that huge important role of a process of the construction site is going.
Right.
Well, here I'm the person with the tech that holds the tech side of it. So what I'm going to say is, what people have to remember is anything that is was and is paper based has been made into a digital format.
Right.
Why these tools impress me is because even if you took on a digital form of any of these tools,
Absolutely.
these tools at the cost you're going to find at the end, they're so inexpensive, it's laughable. But you can use these when you're looking at a digitized version of this and know foundationally what the fundamental elements have to be in these particular tools, digital or not.
Absolutely.
I think that's really the message.
It is. And I say to all the QCs that go through our program, you earn your money at the front end of the project and the back end. At the front end, it's all about the submittals and getting everybody out of the dirt. You need to get all those subs approved, get their pre-kickoff meetings or prep meetings done, get them in the dirt, get them going. And then the back end, again, is through the commissioning closeout process. So that's why those two tools are very vital to make sure, tying that back to what you said at the beginning, so you don't lose that 10%.
And it's like you said, Stephanie and Renee. I mean, there's software out there. The big boys are using it. And
we've used them.
We've definitely used and been integrated on projects that we've rescued.
Yeah.
And they're real fancy because they send emails and notifications and do all of this and do all of that. And it's all hands off. All I got to do is just scan it and upload it. Well, at the end of the day, that may be nice, but if you're not tracking the right information, it's just a big digital filing cabinet.
Slop in equals slop out.
Slop in equals slop out.
So,
and part of the QC process is you're there not only to ensure that what is going in is part of the contract and protecting the client. You're there also to protect your owner as well as the subcontractors. And if you're not doing a good job, it will definitely show.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, from the owner's seat, how does this change leverage with the team? So you got it.
Yeah, the owners, we call this the whack-a-mole. So they use this register to whack-a-mole. And so the colors that are at the top of it, Greg actually instituted that, and he liked to color code what's revised and resubmit, what's been reviewed, what's been approved. So it's a real quick look at who's holding me up, who's got the block of the opens, why are they open, how long have they opened, have they even given us a submittal? So that's when the owners can go to, again, whether it's a subcontractor that's not getting them in or performing or not understanding how to submit a complete submittal or a variant submittal, or whether it's the DOR that's driving their feet in the ground. So this is that tool that the project management and owners use to go whack-a-mole and try to get more time back.
And if you're a first-time QC, if you're a project engineer that has been tasked to do this, it can be a daunting amount of information, right?
Absolutely.
How do I collect this? How do I manage it? Oh my God, there's 1,000 submittals on this job, and I've got to do all of this other stuff. The first time you do it's a little rough, but if you keep it up and you keep it populated in real time, it's super easy to maintain.
Well, and vice versa. It's just as important as subcontractors. We teach this to our subs. Subcontractors can get a general contractor that either doesn't have a staffed QC or they have a weak one that hasn't been trained, and they could be asking things that's not their responsibility. And they could be coming to whack-a-mole, and the subs sent the submittal in a week ago, 2 weeks ago. So subcontractors need to cover their bottom line and themselves and run an equal log in their house to track the submittals when they're giving them to general contractors.
That's just good practice. It's protection, right? And it's keeping everybody accountable and keeping everything transparent.
Yeah.
So we've seen how accountability and schedule tracking work hand in hand, but even when those are in place, from what everything I'm told, closing out a project can turn into absolute chaos nonetheless. Renee, this is where the final piece of your framework, at least what we're talking about today, really shines for me. And for anyone wondering, yes, you'll be able to order these these particular tools as a bundle after this session, but I want to understand, tell us what happens when closing checks get skipped specifically.
Yeah, it's time and money. It's lost. It's bottom line. It's time, money, and margin.
I'm sorry, I'm giggling because that's part of the services that we provide is we come in and we help troubled projects, and troubled projects are usually not at the beginning, they're at the end because they can't close them out.
Yeah.
And
it's because they haven't put the things in place at the beginning that they need. So.
And so when you have to rest, can you give us a story, Greg, that you've been involved in? I think you shared a few with me offline, but I think they're relevant for the audience to really get to understand and feel those details. Yeah,
so we were called in on a military base for a client, a large joint venture project. And they were having problems closing their project out, and they lost the client had lost all faith in them. They had lost faith in them that they knew it needed to be done and the time frame that it needed to be done in. And so what we did is we came in, we took their P6 Microsoft Project Master Schedule. We identified all the few items, the very few items. I think there was 3 and 1,000 items scheduled that they had for closeout. We went to the specifications. We pulled everything in from the specifications and put them all in order. Yeah, just like with what you're showing there. Assigned dates to it. It took a couple of weeks to work with it, to bring in the subcontractors along with the client that we were working for to really pound out the schedule and iron it out. And we had a big, what we call red zone. It's a Corps of Engineers term. It's you're entering the last quarter of the project. They were very, very upset with the joint venture that we were working for, and before they even had to say anything, we slapped this down on the table so everybody could look at it, and we went over it. And the feeling on the project, the animosity on the project, the heavy black cloud kind of started lifting because they were finally trusting that everything that they wanted was being done, and they didn't have to babysit anymore. And it all started with this.
Another project, we were doing special inspections for them. And in doing some of those special inspections, we realized that several steps had been skipped before they had called us in. And we, unfortunately, are not allowed to just leave projects anymore. So we didn't leave them high and dry. And then in doing some of their special inspections, we said, well, you're really missing several holes. And they had known us from other projects. And they said, well, can you help us? Can you bring that fancy flow chart and help us out? And so then it morphed into us taking on their MEP as well to help them out.
And it also turned into, it's not only educating the general contractors, it's about educating the subcontractors.
Yes, well, that's actually what was one of my questions to you. So if you had to explain to a craftsperson why this matters to them, what would you say? Because obviously they're deep in the weeds, deep in their trade, deep in enough, the foreman's, slapping them around to get their work done. If you had to explain quality to them, how do you do it, and would you do it?
I don't think you have to explain quality on a craftsman level, but you have to explain why a quality control manager is there to help them. So most craftsmen that I've worked with, they're there, they're in their trade, they're proud of what they do. They want to do a good, hard day's work, and they want to walk away feeling good about what they've put in. And that's usually what I see on the craftsman level. But they see a QC manager as someone who's just going to come and take pictures and rat them out and try to find nitpicky, put blue tape everywhere and nitpick on everything they do. And that's the mindset that we train all of our QCs to be part of a team and to offer solutions and to not be seen as that nitpicky dictator, but to be seen as part of the solution, not part of the problem.
So tell me how you do it. I want to know, seriously. I mean, because there's a lot there can be vitriol, there can be, team A term team B, I hate this group over here and I hate,
No, we have modules just on, we call it customer filter. We have modules on your relationship on site, communication, right? And how to communicate these things. It sounds silly, but we really teach our QCs to humanize it, right? Just talk to the craftsmen in the field, get to know them, ask them what they're doing, just spend 2 minutes talking to them and knowing what they're doing. And then they're going to see, well, they're there for you. I have gone toe to toe for clients and for subcontractors in the dirt. If that work is in per plans and spec, it's my job to fight for them. I'm there to fight for those folks just as much as I'm there to fight for the client. And I got called into a meeting with a federal user, and they thought it was funny, and they threw a pair of boxing gloves on the table, and they said, in case Renee wants to box, here they are. And I said, there's no box needed because I have a contract, and my contract shows that my craftsmen have it in right, and it's going to stay unless you don't want it that way. And then you can give us a change order and we'll fix it. Give me enough time and money and I'll move the world. And that shows the subcontractors that there's a value in quality control. There's a value for those quality control managers, and that they're there to protect them just as much as they're there to protect the owner. That's their job. So that's what we teach our QCs.
Yeah, it's turning that stigma of, if you're a quality control manager, you're the tattletale. You're the sheriff. The only reason why you're there is to point fingers and make people do rework for free. Yeah. And that's not right. That's not the way that it should be, and that's really not the way that it is. When you start a new project up, you're going to meet with those subcontractors. You are there to showcase that what they are installing is of quality. Absolutely. It's done right the first time, and you're documenting it. Really, at the end of the day, that's what it is. Yep. And then that relationship starts to change, that dynamic. You've got subcontractors coming in, they're wanting to work with you, they're wanting to that's right. It's a paradigm shift.
Yeah.
And it's respect. I mean, you've proven your respect. That's the truth.
It's important.
Yeah.
And it's your reputation. Yeah, well, that's how QCs get more work. That's how quality control managers pick and choose the clients they want to work with. And our QC managers that go through our program, that's what they get to do. They pick and choose where they want to work, what part of the world they want to go work in, and what clients they want to work for. And if they're working for a slimy general contractor, they may finish that project because they finish what they start, but they're not going to work with them again. They're going to go find another position where they're going to get mutual respect.
Yeah, so. I can't tell you the numbers right now, but there is definitely a quality control manager hiring deficit right now.
It's huge.
And, whether you go to work direct as a full-time employee or through a staffing agency, as long as you can show that you know what you're doing and your reputation is there, that's all you have as a quality control manager. You're not building anything. There's nothing tangible other than your reputation.
Yep.
So speaking of owners, which approach protects the trust and enforceable warranties on the owner side?
I think all of it from the start, from our responsibility matrix, where we talk about responsibilities and who does what throughout the project, through the submittal process, all the way through. I think all of these are what the owners use to make sure that everything's on track. I don't know how you feel.
Yeah,
it takes several tools to do that.
It really does. I have this really corny saying about a project site. I look at the staff on a project site as a table, as a four-legged table. Every leg, you got your project manager, your safety, your superintendent, and your quality control manager. If one of those roles is not doing what they're supposed to, the table falls over, right? It doesn't work. Yeah. And it's very simple. Everybody.
And then how does the owner judge who's doing a good job and who's doing a bad one? If you don't have clear roles and responsibilities, how do you do end of the year reviews? How are you rating? Say you've got 4 projects and you're running 5 soups. How do you rate those? To determine who's your strongest, who might need some more support, for bonuses, big enough to give into your bonuses. All of that needs to be on a system where you're comparing apples to apples, and you can't do that without clear roles and responsibilities starting at the beginning.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. And that's exactly what you'll see in the follow-up package that we're going to be sending out. Not necessarily after today, but when we pull the information together. And because we want to spotlight these roles, and that's why I've started by calling out the owner, but I kind of want to go through, as we've talked about these different roles. So if you were an exec, which one of these tools would you put in front of them first? Which one's going to defend the profit margin the best?
The closeout matrix for an owner.
Closeout matrix and then the submittal log.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
For the PM, which shifts them from a reactive to a proactive.
First would be the submittal, right? You're going to need to see that those are flowing and that who's holding you up and who you need to go spend some more time with. And then again, your schedule on the back end, then that flow chart on the back end.
Yeah.
So
Your superintendent is going to, if the quality control manager is not performing on the project site, your superintendent is going to be very, very vocal to your project manager, which we go through in our training.
Right.
Your quality, and Renee spoke to briefly, your quality control manager earns their keep at the front end and at the back half. In at the front end, the quality control manager is having to coordinate with the subcontractors to get the submittals done.
Yeah.
Work can't start without the submittals being done.
Yep.
So your superintendent is constantly, where's this at? I need
when
to get
can
going.
I get him? When
It's
can I
starting to
schedule
affect
it?
the schedule. When
Yep.
can we go?
And you
So
schedule your kickoffs and your preps.
that's right.
Yeah.
So
That's
which one's going to save the days instead of losing them for the soup? Which one are you putting in
Both.
front of the soup first?
I don't know
Both?
which one you think. I think it's both the register and the flow chart.
Yeah, I think it's both. When you get down to the commissioning flow chart of the closing activities, your superintendent is really kind of getting tunnel vision. They're starting to look at punch lists. They're
And they're
starting
wanting to pull off what manpower,
can
what
I
tools, what
can
equipment can I pull
demob
off?
and,
Yeah.
and things like that. So really, that's kind of the transition. They go from major construction to punch list, finishes, things like that. So yeah, I would say the closeout is really what needs to happen.
That's where it's
And
one
so
on
we got two more to go. So
Yep.
we're going to really zone in on the QC now. Which moves them from scapegoat to essential? Which one?
I think it starts with the responsibility matrix. I think that the QCs need clear written roles and responsibilities. And I think that that's what saves a QC on a project of, this is what I'm focusing on. These are my roles and responsibilities on each piece of the project. And this is what I'm running through.
And going back to the table, it's all about transparency. You have a team. When you're on a project, you have a team, and each person needs to be transparent to the other. Hey, I'm having difficulties with this subcontractor. I need your help.
Yep.
Or, hey, this subcontractor is being difficult. You're going to have to involve the project manager to give you a little bit of horsepower, or the superintendent. Hey, this isn't looking quite right. Can you come out and take a look at this?
Yeah.
And it is a team. It is a transparent team effort.
Right.
That cannot be successful if you don't have defined roles and responsibilities.
And you can't have a QC manager hoarding any of it. We have audited at least 20 sites in the last 2 years where the QC manager keeps all the documents like they're precious. Those Lord of the Rings fans out there. So anyway, they hoard them and they don't want to share them. Like, it's job justification. They have to come to me to ask for it. And that's not the way it should be ran. It needs to be some place, whether it's again a file cabinet or it's living in a digital folder system. It needs to have standards, naming, nomenclature, and everyone, the soup, the PM, everyone needs to be able to grab that information at any time. So,
any QCs listening to this, if you're not transparent, there's something wrong.
yeah. If you're hoarding, you're hoarding because you're having something to hide.
Yeah.
So.
And I have one more role, and it's certainly not last but least. Which protects your reputation if you're a craftsperson of your tools? What do you think is going to help them the most?
Well, the submittals make it so that they can get started. As far as the craftsmen go, I hope that every craftsman gets to work for a company that holds quality control as a culture. Priorities change on a job site every single day. So quality control shouldn't be a priority. It needs to be a value, because values never change. And if your quality control is set up as a value or a culture, then that's going to protect the craftsmen, because they're going to see the need for that QC manager as their first line of defense, right? We hold the shield between them. We cut all the BS between them and the end user and the owners out. They shouldn't have to fight those battles. That's our job. So the submittal register is the start of that, the craftsman level. That's what I said. The subs need to be running their own registers so they have proof. Hey, GC, I handed this submittal to you. I gave it to you on this date. I am not past my contractual time to give it to you. So if your schedule slips, that's on you. So that does help them. And then the flow chart gives them that pictorial view. And every time I've used that in a job trailer, and it's been hundreds of times now, I've never not had a sub walk up and go, oh yeah, see my block? My block's crossed out. Sparky, you're holding the next guy up. Or mechanical guy, not looking good for you. Or, it goes on, right? Everybody kind of jabs everyone and they use that as a tool. And so kind of creates that camaraderie.
Yeah, your reputation is just not for, you know, the general contractor or company that you're going to work for. Your reputation also goes to the client that you're building the building for, or the structure or the road or whatever it is.
Right.
That is where your reputation lies. And really what we've been talking about today is your Swiss Army knife for reputation. If you're managing it well, you have clear defined roles and responsibilities, and you are doing what you're supposed to be doing,
Tracking what you need to track.
tracking what you need to track. That's
Quality is what remains after the dust settles. It's what's left, right? The dust settles and everyone leaves site. Quality is what's left. And that is truly what we build our reputation on. And I don't care if you're big, giant contractor or you're a little bitty contractor, we're only as good as our last job. And our last job could make or break us. For a small contractor, it's going to be a smaller job, but that value could literally topple them. And the same thing for the big boys, right? The big contractors out there. If you don't do a good job, then you are not going to get work that again.
when earlier in the on the podcast here, when we were talking about, you know, the dollars lost and the days lost, you know, if you're not tracking these things and you're not defining what you're doing, it's big dollars, right? It's, you know, submittals that are being held up. It's dollars in the schedule for, you know, somebody in the subcontractor's office redoing those submittals over and over and over again. You know, and it's reputation equates to dollars when it comes to that GC trying to get the next job.
Well, and the subs too. We've seen subcontractors take work into arenas that they're not used to, especially the federal arena. And then they're not prepared. They don't have the quality control training to understand what their deliverables are. And that costs them so much money that sadly, we have seen them fold on other projects where we jump in to try to help the GC and they're so far underwater, they just can't recover. And nobody wants that, because when the subcontractors succeed, the whole project succeeds. And by succeed, I mean make money. So if you're a general contractor and you don't have that mindset, you shouldn't be in the game. That is one of my pet peeves. Your subs need to succeed.
I mean, we're all doing this for, you know, for a paycheck and an occasional beer, right? We're not doing this for funsies, you know, and those, like Renee said, those subcontractors that, you know, build the same, you know, take irrigations, you know, sprinkler systems, you know, that you have in your landscaping, you know, well, I built this exact same thing for this golf course. How come it's not going to work on this federal landscape? Well, it's not the construction, it's all the red tape that goes with it. And the QC can be instrumental in helping that subcontractor either break even and make some money or go bankrupt, you know, because they don't understand. You know, and we offer that training and have trained numerous subcontractors
a lot,
you know, and quite frankly, we've been able to keep them coming back because of that training, or they've decided, you know, hey, I really appreciate it, but the federal arena is just not for us. We'd rather build on the golf course.
So speaking of which, are you saying that you're more of a specialty for the federal environment? Or
we're saying that our processes are built on federal construction because that's the most stringent right now. So the Corps of Engineers program is about the most stringent you can get. And then that can be tailored down to run commercial or residential or facilities. When I had my construction company, all of my projects were based on the Corps standards, but they were minimized, right? So you had a softer spoken client. You might not need these columns on your submittal log because they don't need to run through all these people, for an example. So you can tailor it down. It's so much easier to have a robust program and set for your culture and then tailor it down when you're doing different softer spoken clients than if you're only doing smaller, softer clients and you're having to tailor up. That's when you're going to lose. That's when you're going to lose the money. Mm-hmm. So we do have a lot of federal contractors and small contractors, 8A contractors, HUBZone, WOSBs come to work with us, but we are now branching out because in today's day and age with everything, the material prices, the tariffs, the schedule crunches, our world dynamic has changed and construction has changed. And contractors across the globe are realizing that they need these kinds of safeguards in place to protect their bottom line.
Yeah, it doesn't matter what you're called, quality control, or what your title is.
I don't
Quality
care.
control has to be done, right? Somebody's got to be
And they
doing
need to
it.
be trained to do it, right?
Absolutely. So if you're a project engineer, if you're a quality control manager,
We
if
don't-
you're,
It's perfect.
yeah, we've got it for you.
Yeah.
You know, we've what's really nice is that we always say that it's training provided by quality control managers that have made all the mistakes in the field.
Yeah.
You know,
We've made lots.
made lots of mistakes, so you don't have to.
Yeah.
And
QC
that's why you
managers-
created quality control.
It is.
You call it university. I mean, it's a
It is.
kind of a weird word ascribed to construction.
Yeah, it's not a stuffy professor, right? It's not a desk school. But yeah, you're right. I mean, that's why we birthed the program. When we started out as QC managers, there was nothing but like 1,000-foot level training that basically taught you this is what QA is, this is what QC is, and everything is your fault and everything's your responsibility. And that's no joke. That's really what was out in the industry. And that didn't tell us day to day, what do we do if we're a QC manager or we're a PE doing QC or I'm an SSHO dual hatted as a QC? What do I do step by step from cradle to grave on a project to keep my company protected? And that kind of training wasn't out there. And that's where we came in. So.
Yeah. And unfortunately, a lot of people think of quality control as, well, manufacturing quality control, or, we're going to build an ISO 9001 quality control process.
This is construction. QC.
That's not it. It's construction. There's no degree that you can get right now.
No.
There's no college that you can go to get spun up to do something like this.
No.
And so
it's called experience, but that's why both you both can walk your talk. Yes, you got some formal education, but you still had to leave the classroom and apply it. And I think
School of Hard Knocks, right?
It's too often in our society, it's always been the one or the other. I think that's why we find ourselves where we find ourselves. And I won't go down that rabbit hole, but I think that's why one of the major reasons we find ourselves where we find ourselves. So I just want to, we've looked at these different ideas. I just want to kind of look at the downside, if you will, the objection handling piece of it. So really quickly, a PM says we don't have time for another process. How do you handle that? How do you deal with that?
You don't have time and you can't cost not to have it. That's how I handle it. And then we have lots of examples that we usually give them when we get hit with that. But if you're starting a project, that's when you need your processes. That's when you're not going to lose time and money. When you're halfway through and you realize you should have had them and then you try to implement them, that's going to cost you. And you just, again, in today's day and age, everything is so competitive. I'm going to date myself, but when I got into the industry, they would take the top number and that's what they wanted to use. They would throw out the lower bids because they knew you missed something. And that's not the world we live in anymore, right? They're always wanting everything for cheaper, right? Cheaper and faster. And cheaper and faster doesn't always protect the contractor. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so from the sub side, so they say quality is the GC's problem. You did touch on this a little bit. So you basically, if you had to, you had 5 minutes with them and no longer, what would you say to the sub?
That the quality control is just as important to them, and they need to protect themselves against not only the end users, but the GCs and a weak QC manager if they haven't been trained. I think the subs need quality control first and foremost to protect their craftsmanship.
Yeah, a quality control manager that doesn't know what they're doing can be just as detrimental to a project, if not more, than not having one.
Yeah.
And the subcontractor that's trained for QC on those projects knows contract and knows the specifications, knows what they need to do contractually for that general contractor, and can really safeguard themselves from that QC that doesn't know what they're doing.
Yeah.
So let's put a bow on all of this, okay? I mean, this presents, invest in quality control, QCU. Somebody just sees the cover and they're going, I don't have time for that. If you only had 30 seconds to convince a resistant role anywhere with power, what would you say is going to be the game changer and that their outcomes will be so much more positive for it?
Yeah, it's the real world scalable solution. Quality control is the quickest scalable solution to protect your bottom line. And that's what I would tell them. That, and then again, we talked about quality control is your reputation. And your reputation is everything. And that's what's going to get you future work. And that's what's going to, if you're creating a legacy company, that's what's going to make your legacy for your generations to come. And if you're a craftsman, you care about your work. You wouldn't be in our industry if you didn't care about what you're doing. And so that's your protection. That's your shield.
My 30 seconds is you're worried about the pennies while you're losing dollars. You know, by not having the quality control individual
Training and program.
Training and program on your projects, you're a loose fire hose that doesn't have anybody, you know, to handle it.
So I would just want to, I just want to sort of wrap this up now. I mean, we're here because of tools. We're here because these tools have legitimacy. And okay, so there's a little bit of price attached to that. Renee, if you can just sort of wrap us and let people know, you know,
what. So just literally for this. Yeah, literally for this, we broke these out. Usually this comes with our form package. So we broke these 3 tools out. You can do them separately at $25 a pop, or you can do the bundle deal. Our flow chart is $50 separate. And then the bundle deal, you can get them all for $80. And we've actually made these under our store. So you can find that at qcuniversity.net. And you go there and it'll say as seen on this Intelligent Construction Opportunities live stream. So we've literally broken those 3 that we discussed today out separate and also done a bundle deal, just so those folks that listen to this, if they just want to get their feet wet on some tools that they can use today, that they can start using on their sites today, that it's really easy for them to get a hold of them.
It's easy to get a hold of them. It's also easy to pay for them. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, you know, Renee and Greg have made them because they are the foundation. Again, whether you're going to use this in sort of some form of a mixed digital play, that's up to you. There's going to be more in our takeaway package about that. But certainly, at least you'll understand what kind of the baseline and the investment is for these foundational, I'll call them ideas. I mean, before they're tools, they are ideas that set the foundation to have a successful project.
Absolutely.
That's what they are.
Absolutely. We just want to give, so many people are talking about problems, and it's so easy to say, this is a problem on a job site. This is a problem. You need this. You need that. This is a problem. But this was our chance to give you solutions. And that's really important to us.
Yes, absolutely. Well, I want to thank you both,
Thank you.
both for the time, both for the investment and time before we went live today, to really get to understand what you're about, why you do what you do, your backgrounds, as I can't say enough about it. You walk your talk, you've been there, done it, and you wear the experience and you practice the experience every day. So construction people out there, listen to them. They're one of you.
We just
We're
want
one
to
of you, right?
Yep.
Thank you so much for
Thank
having us,
you.
Stephanie.
You're very, very welcome. And if anybody out there in listening land has any questions, you can find me on LinkedIn, and you can find Renee and Greg Glendenning, same thing on LinkedIn. Just look for their profiles. But I will be in touch with anybody that certainly registered and then some after today's live stream. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.